Hello again, friends, and welcome back. My name is Oscar Montesiga, certified wine and spirits instructor for the International Wine and Spirits Guild. And thanks for joining me here at the Booze Library. We're at Encore Vintage Academia, and today I bring you something quite exciting, something that maybe there's a lot of misunderstanding about, or just general lack of knowledge. Even though that's a sad note because it's really a fantastic spirit, but also one of the oldest spirits in the continent, the American continent, um, just based on roots and tradition. So today I'm featuring for you Tetitla, and this is a Destilado de Pulque. And I think really because we haven't really talked about Pulque in the channel prior, we're going to take just a couple minutes to explain what that means, what that entails. It is really considered, and it is basically falling under the greater category of agave spirits. It is an agave spirits. It is made with agave, but it is made very differently than all the agave spirits that most people do recognize. Of course, the benchmark tequila, but also mezcal, and definitely there's circles where other spirits are being are also known, especially if you're already in the agave circles, right? Like raicilla or bacanora. You could also put sotol into the broader agave category, even though it is not technically an agave. It is treated the same way, and by all intents and purposes, it was at one point considered misclassified as an agave. Sotol, that is. But pulque is made with agave just very differently. It's completely a different process. And so we'll start with the plant, right? I mean, we have the maguey plant, the agave, that for thousands of years, many thousands of years, the agave has given the people of Oasis America and Mesoamerica and beyond that, so South American peoples have also collected agave as a resource, whether it is for building material or textiles, clothing, etc., or even what we're about to talk next, which is a natural sweetener. It is a natural honey. It is a readily available honey that the agave plant gives us. So instead of cutting down the leaves of the plant to get to the core and roast that and make the production into the agave spirits like mezcal or tequila, you don't cook the heart of the plant. What you're doing instead, upon inflorescence, or once the agave itself is mature and it's about to throw the quiote, the flower stalk, ancestral producers, what they would do is basically chop that down and build what they would call a box or a drawer in the heart of the agave, where this nectar, the sap of the agave, the naturally sweet sap, what we call today aguamiel, it would collect in that box. And typically you harvest that honey once or twice a day in intervals. So maybe once in the morning, once in the late afternoon or early evening before you go to bed, and you collect your honey, the aguamiel honey, the maguey's honey, which is an incredible natural sweetener, just like honey. It has a lot of antibiotic, probiotic, nutritional elements, a lot of micronutrients. And that honey, again, they would just drink that as a food source, or obviously use it to sweeten up their other culinary recipes. But it being a natural sweet nectar or water, honey water is aguamiel. You could also ferment that honey, and that became pulque. Which, if you want to translate that to Viking terms, you have mead made from honey. So from honey they make mead, a fermented honey beverage. From aguamiel, the agave sap, we ferment that and we get pulque. And pulque is very different in color than what mead would be, because mead is like a brown, amber, copper, cloudy beverage, versus pulque that becomes a white substance, it's like milk, like milky white fermented beverage. And it's been used for thousands, many thousands of years, millennia, in all the American continent, from New Mexico, Arizona, northern Mexico to south as Ecuador and Venezuela. So in Ecuador, they actually have a protected pulque spirit called misque, or chawar misque. It is basically what in Mexico what we would call pulque. And today there's also a spirit produced from that called misque, and it is a pulque spirit. It is currently the only denomination of origin that grants aguamiel / pulque spirit in that category. In Mexico, Destilado de Pulque can be made in really anywhere where you have a good amount of agave that gives you pulque. But it is also most famous in southern Mexico, in a state called Chiapas. In Chiapas, there's a township called Comitán, and in Comitán they make Comiteco, and it is a Destilado de Pulque, or a pulque spirit, that is further defined with a name. It's called Comiteco, but it is not currently a denomination of origin. It does have an identity standard, or a standard of identity, but legislation hasn't moved fast enough to declare it yet a denomination of origin for Comiteco. But basically in Chiapas they make their pulque, and usually they sweeten it with piloncillo or another sugar source as well, make it a little more complex. And it's a beautiful Destilado Pulque, or Comiteco as a benchmark. But today the Destilado Pulque I bring you comes from Teotihuacan, which is very close to Mexico City, just outside, I believe, northeast corner of Mexico City, Teotihuacan. If you just Google search Teotihuacan, you're gonna find beautiful ancestral pyramids built many thousands of years ago. And it's been part of the culture, both the agave harvesting for textiles, for building material, etc., as well as for pulque production. And when you drink pulque, it has medicinal value according to ancient texts, as well as recommendations like they would give it to nursing mothers so that the nutrients from the pulque go to the offspring or the babies. So it's been used for many years across many cultures for many reasons. But upon distilling technology, came around, they started distilling that again because it's already a naturally sweet product that you don't need a sugar conversion. So basically, you just ferment and you have an alcoholic beverage, pulque. Then you distill it and you have a full strength spirit. And it is fascinating because it has so much more nuance. You can still taste the agave, but it has a lot of nuance thanks to that, to the yeast, to the terroir, to the agave species, to the hand of the producer. And by the way, they're called tlachiqueros, and the tlachiqueros are the guys basically scraping the cajon, collecting aguamiel, and doing the rounds usually twice a day to collect honey for several months, depending on the temperature. It could be a short season or a long season, depending on this, the temperature, the ambient temperature, and how fast that aguamiel is collecting. And then you basically build your batches. You collect your pulque tanks or whatever you're collecting in a big mass, and then you may do some blending. But pulque is fascinating. You need to drink it fresh. If you ever see a pulque canned or anything, like, it's usually been pasteurized, or it just will not taste like raw, precious pulque. So the best thing we can get usually in the States, unless you actually know a pulque producer in your backyard, which I doubt it for most of the United States, we don't have that tradition today. The closest thing you're going to get your hands on pulque is a Destilado Pulque. So typically this producer, they harvest when the agave is 12 to 16 years, and they're using agave salmiana and agave mapizaga. And again, Tetitla made by Destileria Belem Tecalco. Belem is a little township right there in Teotihuacan. This artesanal pulque spirit comes at 50 ABV. The producer also makes a standard lower label, like a 38, 48, 40% ABV Joven or unaged spirit, as well as the reposado rested in wood. But I chose to do the 50% ABV to get us more essence of pulque itself. And the two agave species I mentioned, Salmania mapisaga, within what they cultivate, are very much like sub-varieties of what they recognize with different names. And I'm going to mention a couple of them. We have Manso, Carrizo, Cenizo, Verde, Chilometal, Ayoteco, Pua Larga, and Prieto, and a few others. So even though there's two agave species, within their fields that they collect, they have several colloquial names for their sub-varieties of the two, Salmiana and Mapisaga agaves. That said, we are tasting this beautiful spirit neat, of course, and it is clear. Again, there's no aging, it's a clear spirit. And let's go to the nose. My nasal impact starts with subtle, soft drying. There's a little bit of drying with just a touch of prickling. It really lets you know the alcohol is there, but very subtle. On the nose, brings the actual essence of pulque, the agua miel, sweetener, pulque aromas, a little bit of honey, a little bit of bee pollen, yellow flowers, like sunflowers. Then there's a little bit of spice like cinnamon and ginger, a little bit of vanilla. There's also sweeter notes of cooked items like sweet potato and roasted sunflower seeds. And then there's a lactic character that comes in, and that translates to yogurt. But there's a little bit of character of yogurt as well as like rice pudding combined with a vanilla cinnamon, like it's there. And more spices like coriander and cardamom. The aroma production intensity is powerful and complex. Its length is average. It doesn't rest on my nose a lot, but also it is fine. It's a fine aroma that does change, and it's inviting. It wants me to go back. All right, let's talk about the palate. The palate is mostly coating. It's quite coating. It's very mouthfeeling. Just a little bit of highlights of astringency, a little bit of highlights of warming. You do get a warming sensation. But the alcohol and glycerol are smooth. It is a medium full spirit, medium full body, and sufficient alcohol. It doesn't desire more, it doesn't desire less. It's just quite sufficient. My primary tastes include both sweet and sour, with a little highlight of bitterness, a little highlight of piquancy. There's that spice that makes it piquant, and a buttery smoothness on the mouthful. My flavors really mimic the nose. There's all of what I mentioned, plus a few other things like peppermint that shows up. So I do get peppermint as a new flavor, but I still get the ginger, the coriander, the cardamom, the cinnamon, the vanilla, the pollen, the honey, and the sweet potato. It's all there. The intensity of flavor is concentrated. The flavors are persistent, they're concentrated, and still complex. And the balance is both harmonious. It starts harmonious, but it's got boldness. This piquancy, part of it is the piquancy, and part of it is the astringency that raises up a little bit. So it's harmoniously bold. It's beautiful. The aftertaste is pleasant and actually long to very long. For several, almost a dozen seconds, that you can still taste the pleasant flavors of the spirit. It's beautiful. And my overall impression is excellent. This is a very well made, crafted Destilado de Pulque. some of the best I've tried. I really don't like when I have a Destilado de Pulque that tastes like a lot of sweet corn. And I made a joke this with another colleague that I don't like corn in my agave. I prefer my corn in corn whiskey, and that's where it belongs. But some spirits, because of longer fermentation times or something that goes wrong in fermentation, maybe too hot, it starts to taste like sweet corn, and this does not show that. If anything, you get the sweetness from is the beautiful honey character. So overall, awesome. My pairing suggestions for you is sushi. Try this with sushi, some stir fry, some Asian stir fry, maybe some rice dishes that incorporate in their components a little bit of ginger, maybe a little bit of nuts, and all of that will be a beautiful marriage for this Destilado Pulque. So friends, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe and like and share, and also I hope you learned something new. That's my goal. And shoot me any questions you may have about Pulque or anything else. Thanks for watching. Cheers.